Welcome weary internet travellers, one and all. I'm Menti and today we're going to be talking about Football Manager 2018 and the top 10 features I want to see improved or implemented in the game.
Hey, listen!
As a long-time Football Manager fan, going all the way back to the early Championship Manager days of the late 90s and early 2000s, I've bared witness to improvements in literally every aspect of the game over the almost 20 years I've been playing the series. From the split from Eidos Interactive in 2004 that would see Sports Interactive go it alone and taking the source code of the Championship Manager games with them, but not retaining the rights to the original Championship Manager name, we got our first game with the now famous Football Manager title in 2005. Introducing the 2D match engine for the first time, this represented a leap forward for the series that has been steadily improving with each iteration since, with perhaps a few blips along the way, but that's a subject for another video. In the Football Manager 2009 release, we got the first version of the 3D match engine, and since then the game's been refining the tried and true FM experience with what now racks up to many thousands of improvements and features, both small and large. I have no doubt that Football Manager 2018 will once again add many new features, from small quality of life improvements to the bigger marquee features we all expect, but for many, myself included, we are growing slightly impatient with some glaring issues the game still has. I and many others feel that the last few releases of Football Manager have settled down into a comfortable pattern of evolution as opposed to revolution. The 2017 release of Football Manager was an improvement over the 2016 version, especially with the mitigating of the extremely overpowered fullbacks in the game, but there have not been any drastic leap forward for the series for a while now. Some of this comes down to the fact that there is no competent competition for the series, and if it's not broken, don't fix it approach to the general game design, and the fact that the series is already extremely detailed as is, and adding new significant features that play nice with the rest of the game is quite the undertaking, or so I would imagine. Fans like myself, though, are itching for some of those areas of the game that have been neglected for far too long to be finally sorted out, and that's what this video looks to address. Remember, these are just my personal suggestions, and if I didn't list something you want to see in Football Manager 2018, then please make sure to leave a comment below telling me about it. And if you enjoyed this video, then please hit that subscribe button as well, if you're so inclined, of course. So, without further ado, here is my top 10 features and improvements wish list I want to see in Football Manager 2018. Number 1. Sound. This could really sit under the umbrella of general matchday improvements, of which many are needed, but I believe it deserves its own category, lending to how terrible this part of the game really is. I don't think even anybody from Sports Interactive would disagree that this is a badly neglected part of the series that needs addressing. Sound during matchday is, simply put, quite frankly shocking, and does a poor job of conveying the atmosphere of a real match. Sound in Football Manager hasn't been appreciably improved since 2005, and at this point I prefer to just mute it altogether rather than listen to the low quality crowd noise that defaults whether you're playing in a glorified farmer's field in front of a few hundred spectators to your star striker banging in the winning goal of the Champions League final at the Camp Nou. It's the same. Some people have wanted live audio commentary in the game, but there are a few problems with this, mostly stemming from the fact that not many people are watching matches in real-time speed, unless they're completely crazy of course, the sheer number of variations in audio that would be required for teams and players, dwarfing the likes of Pro Evolution Soccer and FIFA for example, and the various legal and licensing issues that would crop up if they started adding various chants or recording live matches. A few hurdles to be sure, and we shouldn't be expecting full-featured match commentary anytime soon, but that's no excuse to be shipping Football Manager 2018 with the same crappy sound that's been present in the series for nigh on 13 years now. As with everything in this list, I'm hoping this is drastically improved in FM 2018. Number 2. Training. Training in Football Manager has always been just serviceable, with not much tactical insight needed. Even in FM 2017, it's mostly a set it and forget it feature which you sometimes jump into to make sure a certain player is learning a new position, or developing a certain skill, or to set the team up to learn a new tactic quicker. There isn't a real great deal of feedback to the whole thing, and I feel that this is a part of the game that could see a much needed overhaul in Football Manager 2018. This is a very tricky part of the game to improve because Football Manager is already an incredibly detailed simulation, and making training too complex could further drag seasons out and the time spent actually getting your team out there on the field of competitive play. Again, these are things I want to see improved, but I don't necessarily know how that improvement might be implemented. That's Sports Interactive's job, but as is, there is definitely more that can be done with the feature than we have right now. Managers are making their decisions on who to play based on their performances in training, and having a more interactive training feature in the game that doesn't bog down general progress too much would be very welcome. Number 3. Match tactics. Team tactics in Football Manager is one of the meat and potatoes parts of the game, where you really get to stamp your identity and style on your team and the way they play the beautiful game. It's already quite detailed, and enterprising players can do a lot with what is already in the game, but it can also be quite obtuse to understand for new players, and old ones as well, while still not offering quite the close control veteran players want to truly bring their tactical ideas to fruition. Again, there is quite a bit you can do with the tactics already in the game, but a lot of it is badly explained, and again very obtuse, especially for newer players, but even for some of us veterans as well. How do I make sure my inside forward tracks back into a more defensive position when we are out of possession? How can I make sure that my defensive mids are coming in to cover a marauding fullback or central defender? These things are possible for the most part, but are not explained well, and there are plenty more examples. A clear and concise way to instruct your players on how to behave in and out of possession alone would be a great new addition. More individual instructions to really tailor your team to work both individually and collectively is also something sorely lacking. There is much more that can be done here. I'd like to see the majority of work go into this part of the game because it's such an integral part of the FM experience. 2017 brought almost nothing new to the match tactics over 2016, so I'm expecting quite a bit of improvement in this department, with at the very least the addition of some new player roles, but ideally a lot more beside. Number 4. The match engine. This has to be the most difficult part of the game to code and develop from Sports Interactive's perspective. The vast number of calculations that are going on in the background during match day, and the ease at which the match engine can become totally broken and unbalanced with any attempt to patch or upgrade it, are challenges that the series will continue to struggle with long after the 2018 release, but that doesn't mean we're not all expecting some major improvements here as well. Every year there seems to be some exploit, from last year's overpowered fullbacks and crosses to broken target men and overpowered attacking midfielders in previous versions, just to mention a few. This year there was a problem with defensive positioning of wingers and wide midfielders, but that has since been patched and the exploits have been few and far between, which is nice to see. So to be fair, the Football Manager 2017 match engine is pretty good, especially when compared to the absolute disaster that was the 2016 match engine, which for me was a step back from the 2015 engine, but there is still a long way to go to better simulating the beautiful game. The FM 2017 match engine is as good as it's ever been, but it's still not great. Goalkeepers can still be very iffy. Players, especially defensive-minded ones, sit on the ball for far too long in dangerous positions, and you see a ridiculous number of shots hitting the woodwork when compared to real life. Beyond that, balancing the engine to both be reactive to your input but also the best possible simulation of a football match possible is more of a journey with FM than a final destination, but let's all hope we're a bit further down the road on that journey this time around. Number 5. The transfer market AI. As all football fans know, the transfer market in real life is a complete circus of epic proportions, with crazy money flying around, clubs backed by Arab states buying up all the superstar talent, and intense deadline deals getting done. It's a complete summer soap opera at this point, and Football Manager does a much better job than it used to with modelling this extremely dynamic and unpredictable part of the modern game. That being said, once again, as with so many parts of Football Manager, there is a ton of improvement that can be made with balancing how the transfer market works in-game to bring it closer to the real world, and especially how AI managers do their own transfer dealings in the most intelligent and logical ways possible. There is also the issue with how easy it is to build a super squad within a few transfer windows that could probably do with some fine-tuning and maybe some nerfing, to make it a little more difficult at least to amass such epic teams so quickly. Not all teams have the Qatari government financing them like PSG, and those teams should probably find it a bit more difficult to snap up world beaters so easily. How that would be balanced is beyond me, so I'll leave it up to the geniuses over at SI to figure out once again. Number 6. Media interactions, press conferences. Media interaction becomes an incredible bore about half a season in, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that resorts to sending the assistant manager off to deal with the press before too long, because I'm sick of seeing the same old questions. How is there not a wrap this interview up option after all these years? I either have to storm out or click through the same old questions again and again. It's not fun and it's not interactive enough. How exactly you make this part of the game more interesting and more in line with how important a media relationship is between the press, fans, club, players and manager is another headache for the guys over at Sports Interactive to figure out. But it really does need work, and probably at this point a complete rethink and overhaul. I don't think adding another 500 odd questions is really going to help with the tedium here. Number 7. Player interactions. Same thing with the media interactions. It's just not very deep, and given how important the player-squad manager relationship is in real life, it's another part of the game that needs bringing up to date. Adding in contract promises to the game was a good addition, but there is still a lot more depth needed. What makes Football Manager such an amazing series for me is the emergent nature of the game. No two games can be the same, and through your managing of teams you impact that evolving footballing world and get to see the results in the process. Interaction and feedback with that world is therefore of paramount importance, and yet player interactions are extremely underdeveloped, and the aforementioned media interactions are far too samey and boring after a while. There have been attempts to make player interactions a bit deeper, but they haven't amounted to too much. Players kick off too easily, and one bad response can totally alienate them, leading to more frustration than fun. I mean, players can get uppity with you for praising their good form in the previous match as it is currently. Much more depth needed here. Number 8. The 3D match engine graphics. Graphically, the 3D match engine isn't winning any beauty contests, but for those waiting for FIFA-like graphics, and I know you're out there, you are going to be waiting for a long time. Don't expect that, but do expect some big improvements all the same. There is still plenty of graphical fidelity that can be worked on in between what the current engine looks like now and what FIFA looks like. The animations improve every year, and I expect no different in Football Manager 2018, but there is much more needed. Hopefully SI will implement a stadium builder for enterprising modders to get their hands on to recreate famous grounds, so SI can avoid the legal headache of licensing issues the same way the community deals with logos and player pictures. But as well as that, I want to see proper celebrations after winning games, and especially important finals, and a general level of polish over literally everything else. It really can't be understated. There is a ton of improvement that can be made here, and hopefully this will be the year we see a big leap forward in this area of the game. I know the graphics are far from the most important part of Football Manager, but immersion is an important part of the experience. Skill moves need to be better represented and reacted to as well. Players like Cristiano Ronaldo or Messi are just faster and more direct and accurate than your average player in the match engine, which is true in real life, but you don't get a real sense of their playstyles in the 3D engine. Again, I appreciate that this is a very difficult part of the game to get right, but being able to clearly see the difference between world-class talent on the pitch with all the requisite tricks, flicks, feints and stuff we see in real life would bring the level of immersion up considerably. There are tricks in the game as is, but they're not well implemented. Make players look more unique according to their talents, so you can spot them immediately without even looking at their name or number. Sure, I can tell the difference between Mertesacker and Neymar by looking at their 3D models, but much more can be done with animation to make them move completely differently as they do in real life. From there, textures, weather effects, lighting and general ambience all could do with major improvements, so not asking for too much then. Number 9. The newsfeed. This is another major part of the game that I've been hoping to see some revolution as opposed to evolution of for a while now. The newsfeed, and now social feed, are your primary ways to learn about the developing emergent football simulation around you. But even with careful management of subscriptions, it soon becomes a sea of notifications which you inevitably increasingly skip through faster and faster for expedience if you're anything like me. I am against dumbing down complex games like Football Manager in any way. Let me make that crystal clear. The level of extreme detail is one of the main reasons I play in the first place, but streamlining certain information and making sure the player at home gets the best sense of the footballing world around them is something that could help the series a lot for old and new players alike. It could be quite easy to get stuck in a bubble, especially if you're managing lower leagues, as to what is going on outside the league you're playing in. Sure, you get notifications about the larger footballing world, and you can go and find this information anytime you want, but it's a bit clunky. I can go and find out who won the World Cup, who's the top scorer in the Bundesliga, and who won the Ballon d'Or, but the game makes me search for this a bit too much, or it gets lost in the shuffle in your notifications. We need a new way of presenting the biggest stories that make up the world. The game needs to prioritise huge events in the footballing world, like a World Cup, in a better way. Likewise, it needs to make sure that the player has a good idea who the top 10 players and clubs are in the world and how they're doing. A dynamic, tabloid-like paper feature that focuses on all of the exciting gossip, like Messi scoring a hat-trick at the weekend, a famous player getting suspended for a string of important fixtures, a club upsets the status quo in another league, etc., could collate all the big juicy stories for the player to digest all at once, perhaps at the end of every month, allowing for a much more solid sense of understanding the world as it unfolds in your save, outside of the confines of your club and league. Number 10. International management. International management has always been a tacked on bare bones feature in Football Manager, so will the 2018 release look to remedy this severely underdeveloped part of the game? There is a ton that needs to be done here, from enhanced media interaction and interest, more specific goals when qualifying for major competitions, increased player interaction, and the vital ability to actually train with your international squad, in what is hopefully a revamped training module for the entire game, to bring this part of the game in line with the club management part of the game. It's just not well developed, and there's a lot more that can be done here as well. So there we have it, my top 10 features I want to see implemented or improved in Football Manager 2018. Do I expect them all to be dealt with this release? Of course not. The series will continue to improve for years to come, but I do hope we get more than a glorified patch in Football Manager 2018, and they start to push the envelope on some of the features that are getting more than a little long in the tooth at this point. I prefer to see some parts of the game worked on from the ground up, even if they are not the most polished this release, because I want to see that revolution from SI in at least some parts of the game this year. If you thought I was being too negative and down on the game, I'll point out that this is not the intention. I love the Football Manager series and waste innumerable hours on the game every year, and I'm certain I'll be doing the same with Football Manager 2018. I just want to see the game continue to improve in every way possible. I hope you enjoyed this video. If there's anything you want to see in FM 2018 and I didn't mention it, then don't forget to leave a comment below. And if you like this content and want to see more from me on everything from Football Manager, of which there will be a Let's Play series on release of the new game on this channel, to Hearthstone, news about Cyberpunk 2077, Elder Scrolls, TV and film analysis, and reviews including Rick and Morty, Star Trek, Game of Thrones, Stranger Things, and much more, then make sure to hit that like button and most importantly that subscribe button. Again, if you are so inclined. Thanks for watching, I'm Menti, and until next time, stay frosty.